Having experience in public office can oftentimes work to one's favor during an election. Patrick O'Connor seeks a second term as state senator representing Plymouth and Norfolk counties. He's opposed by pediatrician Dr. Katie McBride. Having been involved in legislative issues in this area, as well as starting politics at a young age, should the current senator be worried about his opponent's credentials? Hello, this is Joe Collymore, and welcome to a special edition of Campaign 2018 on Close-Ups. Our special guest today is State Senator Patrick O'Connor, who represents the counties of Plymouth and Norfolk. Welcome, Patrick.
Joe, very good to be with you.
Glad to have you here. I'd like to share with our audience a little bit of your background, and then we'll get right into a conversation about some of the key issues that we think are of interest. First off, Patrick was born and raised in Weymouth and attended public schools, attended college at Kingston University in England, and currently resides in South Weymouth. You represent Plymouth and Norfolk counties, as I mentioned, which encompasses Cohasset, Duxbury, Hingham, Hull, Marshfield, Norwell, Scituate, and Weymouth. You were first elected to public office in 2005 to the Weymouth Town Council at the age of 21. I want to make sure we come back to that one there. You were appointed as the chair of the Public Safety Committee. In 2014, you were elected by your council peers to serve as the Weymouth Town Council president. And one of your first actions as council president was to create a mental health and substance abuse committee, and that researched and implemented best practices in the fight against the opioid epidemic. You also spearheaded the Southfield, now known as Union Point redevelopment project. In 2007, State Senator Bob Hedlund brought you in on board to serve as his legislative director at the State House. And as legislative director, he authored all of the senator's bills, developing policy and initiatives, working on important statewide and district-specific issues. In 2015, you launched your campaign to fill the vacated seat for this Plymouth and Norfolk County State Senate's office. And you were re-elected to a full term in November of that same year. And now, in the 190th General Court, you've been appointed to the following committees: Senate Committee on Global Warming and Climate Change, Senate Committee on Personnel and Administration, Joint Committee on Economic Development and Emerging Technologies, Joint Committee on Education, Joint Committee on Housing, Joint Committee on Labor and Workforce Development, Joint Committee on Municipalities and Regional Government, and Joint Committee on State Administration and Regulatory Oversight. Are there enough hours left for you to at least get home and check your mail?
No, it's a lot of committees, but it really does give me a good grasp of a lot of the priorities and challenges that people in Massachusetts and people on the South Shore face. So being able to be on those committees, have a voice in the world of education and housing and global warming and environment and labor and workforce development and everything else that comes along has really been, in my opinion, beneficial to the residents of the South Shore and to the state as a whole.
Let's talk about the environment. And two of your most popular bills in the House are in regards to the environment, and more specifically, talking about renewable energy resources and funding state grants for dam and seawall repair. And one of the most controversial, of course, is the compressor station in Weymouth. You're obviously on record as opposed to that compressor station. As I understand it, you actually look forward to put forth an amendment to prevent that construction. Can you catch us up to date on where things are at this point?
Sure. I was actually down with the folks last night. They unveiled their new billboard right on 3A as you're coming down, sort of in the North Weymouth section, right before you get to Hingham. You are now going to be able to see a no compressor station billboard sign that's going to be up there for a significant period of time. So what's going on right now is that we have a health impact assessment that we were able to secure. Myself, Representative Moschino, Representative Murphy, and the delegation was able to secure this through the governor's office. And they're going to look at current air quality, current quality of soil, and other health impact assessment specific to the Fall River Basin to see currently what's going on there right now. Right now we have a power plant there. Right now we have a glycerin factory there. Right now there's a lot of heavy industrial use. And to then say, on top of all that, we're going to put a natural gas compressor station on a parcel of land that would be the smallest parcel of land that compressor station would ever be on, right next to a bridge we just invested $300 million to rebuild, I think is an inappropriate site for this station. And when you look at these compressor stations across the United States of America, they're usually in very rural areas on about 50 to 75 acres of land. This would be on 4 acres of land. And it would be in an area where there's high residential area, high individuals that are going to school, children, school-aged kids. And when you look at the entire structure and proposal, where most of this gas is going up to Canada anyway, and it's basically going to, the gas that's going through this pipeline is going to go straight to Canada and to be liquefied and shipped over to Europe. So it's not one of those questions of, oh, well, we need the natural gas, or this natural gas may lower costs in Massachusetts. That's not even the case. What we're doing is we're putting a compressor station where the structure of a compressor station, for those at home who don't know, that on this new frack gas, every 70 to 100 miles, there needs to be a compressor station to essentially, for lack of a better term, clean the dirty gas, because all these chemicals are going in to get this gas out of the ground, out of the shales, and eventually sent into these pipelines. And so every so often they need to be cleaned. These are cleaned through these compressor stations, and the compressor station then takes all of the bad elements that are there and every so often does something called a blowdown. And these blowdowns basically omit these chemicals, many of which cancer-causing, many of which directly tied to childhood autism through studies done by the University of Pennsylvania and others, into the atmosphere. And so what we're saying is this is an absolutely inappropriate site for a compressor station. My opinion on them in general is that we need to scale back what we're doing currently in the field of gas, natural gas, because it seems to be a real unknown as far as the health risks go to it, and also the public safety risks when you look at what happened just recently in Lawrence and North Andover.
Absolutely.
But in addition to that, it's really taking a step back and saying communities in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts should have some say and some control over these federally mandated and federal preemption projects that are going on right now, especially when it comes down to potentially impacting the health of our seniors, of our children, and our residents. So that's why I've always been opposed to this project.
Staying on the environment for another moment. In our coastal communities, as you know, we've experienced a fair number of storm damage. We've had several projects underway, revetment projects, rebuilding seawalls and the like. And now we're, of course, concerned about the escalating cost of flood insurance premiums. So there's a dynamic that's at play there, and would love to get your thoughts on just how you see this playing out over the long term, and what should we as a South Shore community do in regards to this concern?
Well, I think that the South Shore does an amazing job as far as preparedness, as far as making sure our emergency personnel are out there, making sure our residents are aware of the risks and evacuated if need be. All of those things that have come into play have worked really, really well. When it comes to the infrastructure component, myself, I've been able to secure over $8 million through the Dam and Seawall Repair Fund for the district. We were able to secure $12 million in the environmental bond bill for the district for revetment projects and for brand new seawalls to come on board. Some of the seawalls that money has been secured for are already up, and you can see the differences between these new seawalls actually have more of a curve at the top of it, and it kind of changes the structure in which the water crashes against the seawall and where its direction may go after it actually sort of makes contact with the seawall. And so there's a lot of things that are happening in the world of technology that is going to greatly benefit us. I do not believe that technology will keep up with Mother Nature's fierce storms. I believe that, we've had 200-year storms since the time that I've been in office, and that's an unusual weather pattern. And we are in a very vulnerable spot here on the South Shore, right next to the water. So many areas got hit and got damaged. And what we're going to do is we're going to continue to make those critical investments that we need to. And I also was able to author a commission that passed as part of the environmental bond bill. And that commission is going to look specifically into flood insurance and specifically into what the legislature and what the Commonwealth of Massachusetts can do to partner with communities and partner with residents who may face circumstances that are well beyond their financial ability to afford. that whether that be raising their house up, whether that be the fact that their house is now in a location that simply cannot be habitable anymore. And that's going to be some of the things that I think we're going to face down the line. It's one of those things that every so often, it seems like every year, honestly, that we face one of our communities being able to apply for and secure funding through that fund in order to deal with something that happened over the past winter.
Let's switch gears and talk about transportation. We have, as you know, lots of different modes of transportation as we move from the South Shore, commute from the South Shore into the city. Looking forward in terms of our regional transportation needs, what do you see as the trends, and what are you doing at the state level that can continue to improve our transportation capabilities?
Well, one of our biggest assets that we have are our ability to access public transportation, whether it be through Braintree and the Red Line, whether it be at one of the many stops of the Greenbush Line. Even in South Weymouth, we have the Old Colony Line that connects to Kingston, that can get people in and out of Boston. And obviously, we have our ferries. And what we need to do is make sure that we continue to keep up with the demand that's being put on all of those public transportation sectors because of increased development down here on the South Shore. You see the development happening right now over at the Hingham Shipyard. So what we need to do is continue to keep up with that. And when you look at the development over at Union Point, and what we have over there is the potential for an additional 7,000 residents in the South Shore to be there at full build-out, there's a commuter rail right there. And one of the things that when I first got into office, I said we needed to talk to the MBTA to make sure that we're keeping up with demand, because all of the commuter rails right now that you have, there's only so many cars they can put on there. So there's going to be a point in time where demand exceeds their ability to even shuttle people back and forth inside of the commuter rail. So we need to continue to look for newer, more efficient ways, invest in all of our public transportation sectors, and make sure that we put the most reliable, affordable transit system in place for the residents of Massachusetts.
We were talking earlier about the trolley
Yes.
service that ran this summer over in Hull. Do you see that continuing, and what was the impetus for how that came to be?
Yeah, no, that was awesome. I was able to secure a $15,000 earmark in the state budget. That earmark was then given to the Hull Chamber of Commerce, and Jim Petrollo and a couple other folks said, you know, it would be a great idea is to bring back the trolley. And I said, I'm all in. You know, anything to really connect the community, because that went all the way from Pemberton Point and all the way down right in the Nantasket area, and it connected the community, being able to transport people who were coming in on the ferry, who at previous times had no access to get to the beach. That trolley would pick them up for free and drop them off and then bring them back home at nighttime. And the same thing with residents. I heard a ton of residents say, oh, you know, we were able to go to a local restaurant on the trolley for free, or some family members came down and, you know, we were able to just hop on the trolley and get down to the beach. The Hull Chamber of Commerce is doing some really good stuff down there. They needed some extra investment in order to make this trolley happen, and I was so happy to be able to secure that. I've heard nothing but great things from so many people who have had a great experience with that, and it's community building, it's connecting the communities together, and putting things like the trolley in place was something really special.
So continuing with that idea of using this type of system, the trolley, to help stimulate economic activity in this particular community of Hull, where do you see the opportunities and where we need to go, and how we can help continue to maintain our vibrant economy?
The economy's hot right now.
Yes.
You know, when I went into office in 2006, I've been through 3 of the governor's 4 budgets. That budget at that point in time, we were about $550 million in deficit. We ended this fiscal year over $1 billion in surplus, where about $600 million of that's being stored away in a rainy day fund to face whatever economic challenges we will have in the future, and about $400 million going to go to mental health services, education, and some other targeted school safety and security projects, which I think is going to be, you know, a real excellent investment as far as where that money should go. I think that the biggest economic driver that we have right here on the South Shore is Union Point. It's 1,400 acres, the former South Weymouth Naval Air Station. It's proposed and scheduled to be 3,855 housing units, anywhere between 2 and 6 million square feet of commercial, and it's going to be one of the most environmentally friendly and smartest communities that we're going to try to build under this new structure. We already have self-driving autonomous cars that are out there being tested from a company in Watertown that has used that as sort of their testing ground, which is a pretty cool thing.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
We have some of the highest LEED certified buildings that are there, platinum buildings. So there's a lot of good things happening there as far as when you hit on in the environmental aspect and economics and all of those mixing together. But the potential there is unlimited. We've created 180,000 jobs in the past 3.5 years in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and I think that when you look towards Boston and you see all the skyscrapers and you look towards Cambridge and Newton and you see all the construction going on there in the 128 corridor, what we need to do is we need to make that enticing to development, whether it be life sciences or pharma or any one of these engineering firms or manufacturing, to come down and to look at the former South Weymouth Naval Air Station, to look at Union Point as a place to plant their flag and to say this is someplace that we're going to help build.
Whenever I see a boom of economic activity, immediately I think of, all right, where's the education opportunities that can plug into that economic activity? And I'm talking more specifically about our skilled trades, our next generation electricians, our next generation plumbers. And so I'd like to get your perspective on how you see tying in our educational institutions, our secondary and post-secondary institutions, and how we can give our millennials and the next generation coming behind them to make sure that we've got the right labor pool to make sure that, Pat the plumber, who's been the go-to guy and he's now 70 years old and he's moving slow, who's coming up behind him to take up the reins?
Oh, I agree with you. And when we did a jobs tour not too long ago, and we went around to a lot of different businesses, and one of the biggest concerns that they had, other than the cost of healthcare, the biggest concern they had was that the labor pool wasn't giving them either enough options or any options to fill some of the positions that they had opened up. And these are some really good jobs. My dad's a plumber. My mother's a nurse. Both of those professions are in high need and high demand right now. And they've been able to, afford unbelievable opportunities in life and give myself and my sister unbelievable opportunities in life through those jobs, through being able to learn a skilled trade. That's why over the past few years' budgets, we've been able to make some strategic targeted investments into our vocational technical education at a high school level. Weymouth has a VOTEC system. When I went to high school, the VOTEC system was there side by side with us at the high school. And so what we need to do is continue to strive and bring that option on the table as far as, sometimes college isn't for everybody, and sometimes that these jobs that they have, people want to go right into the workforce at 18. And sometimes there's financial situations at home that doesn't allow situations to happen, and that they need to go out there with a skilled job. But as I said, a lot of the opportunities afforded to me in life were because of skilled labor, because of my parents deciding to be plumbers and be nurses. So I take great pride in having that background in my family, and I take great pride in making those targeted investments so we can continue to see those labor pools grow.
I've always been a fan of, as they say, casting a wider net, if you will, to go out and get more diversity represented in many of our skilled trades, and in particular to target those young people who are coming from what I describe as under-resourced communities, if you will. We come from areas where we've got great support systems, but there are other communities within our Norfolk and Plymouth counties who don't have those support systems in place. And so to the extent that you can provide incentives, for that matter, for some of the unions to go and target some of the under-resourced neighborhoods and get these young people to come into these trades, all the better.
When I went to 3A Marine and I spoke with the folks over there, they were talking about how difficult it is to get folks in for a career in boat repair and fixing mechanical engineering and all of the things that come with boat repair now, and that how lucrative of a profession it is because the demand is so high and the supply is so low, and we want to put in place a marine technical education program with one of our schools, whether it be a Quincy College or a Massasoit, in order to promote the working that is going on right there that's desperately needed right here in the South Shore. You look at all the boat yards we have and marine places that we have. We're in high demand right in this region, and it could be something, a career that a person who's 15 or 16 years old who loves going out in the ocean, that they can look at. But what we need to do is we need to promote it as an option, as a viable option for a livelihood.
I had spoken earlier about I wanted to come back and revisit how is it that a 21-year-old makes a decision to run for public office. What was the catalyst that got you started?
So I enjoyed government a lot when I was in high school. We actually went through a transition where we had a town administrator and board of selectmen form of government, and in 1999 we changed that structure to a mayor and council form of government. And so that went on when I was in probably 9th grade, 10th grade, and it was like hotcakes. Everyone in the whole town ran for for one of the positions, and school committee opened up too.
Yeah.
So you saw signs everywhere, debates were going on, people were doing standouts. It was really the retail politicking that caught my attention first, and I said, this is something that's really cool and really interesting. And the fact that the town was basically transitioning to a city, I thought was really unique. And so I got involved in those campaigns, helped a couple of the candidates out, and really caught the bug, so to speak. And was vice president of my class, my senior class, and then I went over to England. And during my time in England, I'd continue to come home and see some of the challenges that Weymouth faced. And it first started out with Legion Field, which was the field that we played lacrosse, soccer, and football at. During the Greenbush construction project, they actually dumped all of the dirt from the project onto Legion Field, and Legion Field was left unusable. The second was the former South Weymouth Naval Air Station. At that point in time, 10 years had gone by and nothing had gotten done. Weymouth's a community that hits very close to the net school spending requirements. So basically, we have a lack of commercial and a lack of retail. We don't have a downtown in Weymouth, and so a lot of our tax base is residential. And what we needed at that point in time, and we still need at this point in time, is to get those targeted investments for commercial, for industrial, for retail, in order to offset the residential burden of the property taxes we have in Weymouth. So that was the second one of the concerns. And the third was that a lot of my friends that I went to school with and people that I went to school with at that point in time had started using prescription opiates. And that was sort of the straw that broke the camel's back, and I said, I have to do something about this. These three things are really driving at me, and these three things, in my opinion, were a responsibility of the government to provide a solution to the problem.
Yes.
And at that point in time, there wasn't one, so there needed to be a voice at least speaking about that. And I knocked on doors, was able to put together, raise a couple dollars, and go out there and launch a competitive campaign, and I was able to win that election based on that message that, we need a new voice, we need to do something.
Patrick, you touched on public health and you touched on education. Your opponent, Democratic candidate, Dr. Katie McBride, who is a pediatrician, is very passionate about both healthcare and education. And being an elected official, you've been called upon to make some real tough decisions. And as I understand it, there may have been a situation where Dr. McBride might have called upon you for support as it related to the accuracy of health information in education curricula. Does that sound pretty accurate?
There was a lobbying group that came in from Planned Parenthood who had requested support on, I believe, 5 bills. I was proud to be the only Republican co-sponsor of 2 of those 5 bills. The question of the specific bill that you're referring to, we received correspondence from probably 50 different constituents on that bill. Katie, obviously, Dr. McBride was one of them. My reason for voting against that was because of parental notification. So when the bill got put into place, it took away the current structure that we have for sex education in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, where parents are notified about the curriculum that's going to be taught to their children. The legislative leadership in the Senate said that they thought that parental notification would be too cumbersome in this. And in my opinion, I think that teaching sex education to a child is one of the most personal responsibilities that somebody could have. And I think that parents should be absolutely informed and in their own right to teach their child in the way that they see fit sex education.
One of the things that I've got to point out is that, at least at our state level, our politics, our campaign, the rhetoric has been very professional, has been civil. When we get on the national level, and I call it like the 3 T's, tone, temperament, and Twitter, there's a lot of acrimony, and it just seems to fan the flames. And it brings me to the question I want to pose is, I call it moral leadership. And I'd love to just get your philosophy on, in your role, how you engage on a bipartisan way across the aisle. How can you keep the focus on the needs of our community and less about the political rhetoric, if you will?
So when I was on the council and I was elected president of the council, I was elected president by 9 Democrats, 1 independent, and 1 Republican, and that Republican happened to be myself. I think that speaks to the nature in which I try to conduct myself on a public level and a personal level. I believe that there aren't Democrat ideas and Republican ideas that are good ideas and bad ideas. There's one of those things that we see at the national level where people have arguments rather than conversations, and I'm able to work across the aisle on a very, very consistent basis in order to try and advance the priorities that we have here on the South Shore, as well as our shared priorities that we have in Massachusetts. When you look at our education system, and sort of to touch on a lot of the things we've talked about, we have the best education system in the United States of America. And if Massachusetts was actually a standalone country in and of itself, we'd have the 6th best public education system in the entire world. Our healthcare system, you read about every day in and day out almost, somebody coming to Massachusetts, whether it be from another state or another country, to get what's wrong with them healed because of how great our healthcare system is here. Our senior citizens, those with intellectual and developmental disabilities, have the best access to services and care of any single state in the entire union. And the reason is because we work together, that we don't get blinded by this partisanship that's going on right now, and that we collaborate. What you have now on the national structure on both sides of the aisle is not productive for the American people. We have we've lost complete control of our healthcare system as far as costs go. We have VA systems across this country that are in disrepair. It's time that the folks down in Congress and the folks in the White House and in the Senate got to work on behalf of the people and stopped arguing amongst themselves about that letter after their name and built up their name themselves.
To our viewers, many of whom have had a chance to see you, you're out and about, unlike any state senator that I've seen in recent memory here, and I want to commend you for that. You show up for the small events to even the large events. You're very visible. And that's more than just during the election period. What would you like to share with our viewers as to who is Patrick O'Connor, the individual, the son of Weymouth, and in our community at large?
Well, I love my job. You know, I really think that we've built a great team up at the State House that day in and day out help to try and solve people's problems. And I say this all the time, is that, you know, when I walked into a room and I saw a bunch of parents and siblings with 8x10 photos of their brothers and sisters or sons or daughters who died in this opiate epidemic, I take that with me when I go across this district and when I go up to Beacon Hill. When a mother talked to me about her son who was abused in a group home and that she wanted to make sure this never happened to another child, we filed legislation, and I take that with me when I go to Beacon Hill. When I go to an Eagle Scout ceremony and I see some child who's made a huge investment into their community, has done a great job, I bring that with me to the State House. Every single day when I'm out and about, when I'm up on Beacon Hill, I make sure that I have the best interests of the residents of this district in mind and provide them with representation that they can be proud of and that they deserve.
I want to thank you very much for
Joe,
being
my pleasure.
our guest here on Close-Ups, our 2018 special edition. Again, State Senator Patrick O'Connor.
Thank you.
This is Joe Collymore thanking you for listening in. We'll see you next time.